Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Hello all, how are you? Today we'll be exploring Nightmare, which is an excerpt from the Autobiography of Malcolm X, co-authored by Malcolm X and Alex Haley. I know most of you who are watching this video will be students who have this text prescribed on the semester 4 Global Voice and Culture. But let me be clear, it's not just for those smart cookies out there who want to crack the exam with flying colors, but also the ones who want to know about or want to have a skeletal idea of Malcolm X. You too are at the right place. In this video, we will cover these aspects: a brief biography of Malcolm X, a detailed summary of the text Nightmare, themes and narrative techniques used in this text, and finally, the relevance of this text in our global cultural discourse. Before we understand Malcolm X, it is super important that we understand the society or the world he was fighting against. Just like caste discrimination that operates in India, systematically, brutally, and often in the modern times, silently, racism in America was a reality for all the black people. Racism, as you may know, it is the unfair treatment of people because of their skin color or ethnic race. In America, racism was not just about hatred or insults. It was a deeply rooted system. It denied black people their basic rights, dignity, and even humanity. Think about a situation where you're not in control of aspects like where you could live, what jobs you could have, whether you have voting rights, or on the ways in which people treated you, be the police, schools, or the judiciary. There are often situations where you had restrictions of stepping out of your own home after sunset. There are a lot of works that portray the themes of racism, and here are some suggestions from my side. Feel free to comment your opinions in the comment box. See friends, if you're a cinephile, 12 Years a Slave directed by Steve McCune is your goal. If you're a non-fiction enthusiast, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates will work. If you're into theaters, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry is a good read. And if you are into novels like many people around me, Native Son by Richard Wright is a good choice. And finally, if you are people who love poetry just like me, then Telephone Conversation by Wole Soyinka is a good option. How does a man go from being a small-time criminal to becoming a global icon of resistance? Malcolm X was a revolutionary black leader who rose from a life of crime to become one of the most powerful voices against racism and injustice in modern history. Malcolm X, born as Malcolm Little in 1925, his early years were marked by chaos, racial terror, poverty, and street survival, which led him to prison. But what happened behind bars would change the course of history. In prison, Mr. Malcolm discovered the power of reading, of self-discipline, and the fire of purpose. It was there where he encountered the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Inspired by Muhammad's message of black pride and resistance to white oppression, Malcolm educated himself, rejected the slave name Little, and embraced the new identity, Malcolm X. So the X in Malcolm X symbolizes the unknown name of his African forebears, and it is a rejection of the slave name and a reclaiming of black identity. After his release from prison, Malcolm rose as a fierce orator and activist, calling for black pride, self-respect, and uncompromising justice. But in 1964, he broke away from the Nation of Islam. He then went on a life changing pilgrimage to Mecca. There, he saw Muslims of all races worshipping together, which actually sparked a profound shift in his worldview. He began to speak not just of black rights in America, but of human rights across the globe, connecting the struggle of African Americans with anti colonial movements worldwide. In 1965, at just the age of 39, Malcolm X was assassinated. But his voice did not die. His words, captured in the Autobiography of Malcolm X, written with Alex Haley, still shake the world. It's more than a book, it's a call to rise. Even today, Malcolm X stands tall. He's not just a preacher or a political figure, but is considered a global symbol of resistance, pride, and transformation. Now let's talk about the text Nightmare. Malcolm X, he opens his autobiography with a powerful and painful account of his early life, and it's aptly titled Nightmare. The title that you see, it captures both the personal trauma he faced and the larger systematic horror of racism in America. And friends, the points that you see on the screen are the major events that are shared in this particular chapter, Nightmare. Even before Malcolm's birth, his mother, she recalls the night the Ku Klux Klan, an American Protestant-led, Christian extremist, white supremacist, far-right hate group, came to their home in Omaha, Nebraska. They were armed with rifles. They threatened the family because Malcolm's father, Reverend Earl Little, he was a Baptist preacher and a passionate organizer for Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. His father, he spoke proudly about being black and encouraged African Americans to return to their roots, which made white racists angry. Malcolm's father, he was a towering, dark-skinned man from Georgia with only one eye. He had already witnessed the violent deaths of 4 of his brothers, 3 at the hands of white men, including one by lynching. And we can see in the autobiography, Malcolm notes chillingly, "It has always been my belief that I too will die by violence. I have done all I can to be prepared." And yes, we are reminded of his assassination. His mother, Louise Little, she was born in Grenada, in the British West Indies. Light-skinned and proud, she had white ancestry through rape, a fact that brought her deep shame. Malcolm, who inherited her complexion, was the lightest child in the family. As a child, Malcolm believed that the fair skin, it was a symbol of status. But later, he came to reject that notion, saying, "I learned to hate every drop of that white rapist blood that is in me." The family, when they moved to Lansing, Michigan, where racism escalated, despite buying a home, Earl Little's reputation as a graveyite, a follower of rape, brought threats. Local Uncle Tom Negroes, they leaked information about his speeches, and soon the white supremacist group Black Legion, they burned their house down, while the white police and the firemen, they watched without intervening. Later, Malcolm's family, they were forced to move to the outskirts of East Lansing. It was a place where black people were not allowed after dark. The police harassed them constantly, barging in to search for guns. This chapter also reveals subtle racism within the black community. Malcolm recalls how his father treated him slightly better than his dark-skinned siblings, influenced by the belief that mulatto children had better prospects. See, there you can see the intense trauma or the intense submissive or inferiority that all the black people had internally. Even his father was advocating for black people. The internal notion deep down was that black people were considered little inferior, or the white people were of a higher degree of high intellectual and such aspects like that. That kind of myth was being believed by many. In contrast, his mother favored the darker children, perhaps out of resistance to her own light complexion and its traumatic origins. Malcolm recounts the tension within his family. There were arguments between his parents, mostly over what kind of food they had to have. Her mother, she didn't like pigs, but his father was an ardent fan, I can say, of pigs and rabbits. Malcolm also described the so called successful Negroes of Lansing. The successful Negroes of Lansing, they were not owning businesses, they were not holding positions of real power, but the so called successful Negroes were waiters or boot blacks. Even his own image of Africa, he confesses, was full of colonial stereotypes: savages, cannibals, monkeys, junkles. So he even had that idea of Africa as this kind of a jungle and of cannibals during his early life, because that was the common notion that was spread about black people and of Africa. He shares how white children at school called him racist names: nigger, darky, rastas, which planted early seeds of racial trauma within him and his siblings. The most tragic moment for them came with his father's violent and suspicious death. It is believed by many to be murder, pushed under a streetcar, but the insurance company claimed it was suicide and refused to pay. And here we can see the brutality of the systematic power, the system's power and exploitation of the black community. After their father's death, their mother, Louise Little, she was left with 8 children and no job. She faced emotional and economic collapse. Malcolm's older brother, Wilfred, he quit school to work. His mother struggled to get jobs, but she was either fired for being a Negro or for being Earl Little's widow. So the system or the society, after denying the insurance money, also prevented them from getting any sort of jobs. And then came the State Welfare Board. Its presence Malcolm describes as highly manipulative and divisive, because those people, they always talk ill about the family members to one another, which intensified emotional breakdowns. With no money, with no job, with no insurance policies, money, the family sank into poverty. He recalls days when they had to survive on discarded bread, boiled dandelions, or even he was forced, Malcolm, he even stole fruit because of he being starving. He began sneaking into houses during dinner just to eat. Eventually, the State Welfare Board started taking the children away, and Malcolm, he was the first to be sent to a foster home. And finally, his mother suffered a complete mental breakdown and was institutionalized in the Kalamazoo State Hospital. The children were now state children under white guardianship. And Malcolm laments like this: a white man in charge of black man's children, nothing but legal, modern slavery, however kindly intentioned. What are the major themes in his autobiography, and especially with respect to the chapter Nightmare? The themes are racism and systematic oppression that we have witnessed through various incidents, be it destroying their house, being denied of jobs, restricting them from stepping out of their house after sunset, the involvement of welfare society. All this indicate or puts light on the systematic oppression on black people. And there is also the elements of loss, trauma, and family disintegration. One can also note major themes like psychological effects of white supremacy, self identity, and internalized racism, especially when there are incidents where Malcolm thinks in his early ages where that being the lightest child is kind of a state is simple, but later even though the idea was rejected, initially he thought being the lightest child was something to be so proud of. And the way his parents treated him, especially his father, due to him being the lightest shade, he took him to many meetings and churches. And finally, the role of social institutions in black lives. Now let's look at the way Malcolm X tells his own story in Nightmare. First, the narrative style. He uses a powerful first person voice, speaking directly from experience. Of course, because the genre being autobiography. So, this first person voice, it makes his pain, his anger, his truth feel very personal and real. And the events, they're not told like history. Please do read the text, and you can feel that they are lived and felt. We see a house burning, we hear threats from the clan, we feel the fear of a child watching his family break apart. And the storytelling moves between childhood memories and mature reflection. He's not just describing events, he's analyzing what they meant, both for him and for the Black Americans as a whole. And you can also witness the use of vivid imagery and sharp metaphors. For example, the welfare system. It becomes a form of modern slavery. A family being split up, because it becomes a symbol of how racism destroys communities from the inside.
There's one thing that I want to make clear. No matter how much respect, no matter how much recognition whites show toward me, as far as I'm concerned, as long as that same respect and recognition is not shown toward every one of our people in this country, it doesn't exist for me.
The most important question: what makes this chapter or his work so relevant globally? See, when we listen, or if you read Malcolm X's story, we all begin to understand the deep trauma caused by power and domination. Through his life, he teaches us the urgent need to resist injustice, and just as importantly, not to become part of either side. We should neither be the oppressor nor the oppressed. True humanity, it lies in mutual respect, and it is through art and literature that we learn that what it is truly means to be human, and how power operates silently around us. Malcolm's life is not just a story of Black America, it's a story of how systems of power oppress people of color across the world.